SpaceX just launched their 8th flight test of their Starship rocket, the world's tallest and most powerful rocket. And it didn't go so great. I'll get into what happened and why it happened in this video. But before I get started, it's important to keep in mind that this video script was made just hours after the launch. So by the time this is released, some information will be outdated or new information will have come in. But I will try to update as much as possible through posts on my channel page. Okay. Starting from T-minus 40 seconds before the launch, we saw hold for launch checkouts. This happened on the first attempt on Tuesday and ended up being scrubbed just a couple minutes later. But today, after just a couple of seconds, the countdown continued to 0. Now, this is unconfirmed, but this hold could have been related to the issue that caused the explosion. Again, I'm not sure about this and it's not confirmed, but it's an important thing to keep in mind. Continuing to launch, we had a successful liftoff with all 33 Raptor engines lit, and we got some awesome views both on board and off the rocket. Now, I noticed that the ship's methane fuel levels were slightly lower than the liquid oxygen fuel. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but it is an interesting thing to look at. Continuing on, we saw the rocket fly through max Q, or most pressure put on the rocket during launch, and we heard a call out that we were go for a booster catch. We then had the booster have most of its engines cut off, and we had a successful hot stage. Everything seemed nominal on the ship, as all the engines were lit and no leaks were apparent. The booster relit its engines for a boost back to Starbase, but something wasn't right. When the engines relit, we were missing 2. We only had 11 out of the 13 that were supposed to be running. Initially, I had thought this would mean that we would have an offshore divert rather than a catch. We saw this on Flight 6. But we continued hearing callouts that we would go for a booster catch, and eventually the engines completed their burn and cut off. We then got great views from the ship's aft check sections, looking straight at the engines, and everything looked great. Then all eyes turned to the booster as it fell towards Starbase and relit 12 out of 13 engines. So 1 more than last time, but still missing 1. They then went through and caught the booster right out of the sky. This will never not be incredible to me. I mean, just look at this. This is an incredible demonstration of the capabilities and insane innovation SpaceX is making. It was around this time last flight that the ship had its engines fail and it exploded. But this time it seemed different as the cameras cut to another view from the side of the ship and things seemed normal. But then, unfortunately, at T plus 7 minutes 45 seconds, we saw another aft engine view of the ship, and I could make out what seemed to be a fire surrounding the camera. And if you zoom in on one of the engines, you can see a hot spot that shouldn't be there. It's that little orange part on the engine bell. Then, shortly after, at T plus 8 minutes 6 seconds, we saw the top right Raptor vacuum engine cut off, immediately followed by 2 of the sea-level Raptors in the middle. We also, from a side view, could see a big cloud of gas, and the ship starts spinning out of control, looking like one of my KSP rockets when I don't check the staging. The ship is spinning out of control because after losing the engine, it lost the ability to steer and stay on path. So the thrust from the 3 engines still lit pushed the rocket unevenly, causing it to spin faster and faster. Then the last of the middle cluster cut off, leaving the 2 outside engines. And at this point, I'm really surprised that we still have connection. We also see what I make out as debris flying around. And a kind of funny thing to point out is that if you look at the bottom right for the telemetry, we can see an example of the fuel slosh inside of the ship, as the sensors are reading the sloshing fuel at different levels throughout the tank, moving up and down the bar because it's spinning. Now, the spinning goes on for almost 2 minutes until 9 minutes 27 seconds when we lose connection with the ship and it's presumably self-destructed as the telemetry freezes. SpaceX shortly ends the stream, and we got videos of Starship debris re-entering just around Florida and the Caribbean, giving them a very pretty, but also very expensive fireworks show. This ended Flight 8. So what happened? Well, last Starship flight, Flight 7, went almost exactly like this. The same thing happened. There was a fuel leak in the engines, causing a fire and subsequent explosion after it veered off course. I suspect that the exact same issue happened on this flight, due to the fires we saw in the aft section and visible venting of gas. The video of the engines exploding were because, as it spun, fuel sloshed around, causing bubbles in the pipes, which eventually got up to the engines and exploded. Keep in mind that SpaceX is testing their brand new Block 2 ship, meaning that this is not yet tested hardware and very new and experimental stuff. Although it is sad that this happened twice in a row, especially on the tail of 2 successes like Flight 5 and Flight 6, this is just the price they pay for innovation and progress. SpaceX is taking a very hardware-rich approach to this, meaning rather than spend a ton of money researching, calculating, and testing, SpaceX builds, fails in a different way, and then keeps rebuilding until they have a system that works. They did this exact same thing with Falcon 9, and look, that works now. But this is why we shouldn't compare Starship to the Saturn V being successful, because it was successful on its first try with people. But it's important to keep in mind that this is a test program, and NASA invested billions of dollars before the first flight of the Saturn V, which is why it worked first try. And it's important to keep in mind that this is a test program that was made to have failures and setbacks because it's what they need to do to keep innovating and learning. While it is sad to see failure, I bet SpaceX will nail the next flight and continue working to the rapidly reusable future we need in spaceflight. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.